All right, back in the golden age again. Superheroes to super zeros, though, because the age of the superhero, a big thing that happens, and we're going 1940, 1940 or late 30s into the 40s, right? But when anything's the most popular thing ever, it then also becomes what? Right? That's what starts to happen. There's a decline, there's an oversaturation. People get tired of it. You hear about it now. There's fatigue. Superhero fatigue. It starts to set in as these superheroes are just continuing on and continuing on. A lot of the same stories, How many times can you rob a bank? How many this and that happen, right? I might go more into some of the other characters. Maybe Batman deserves a little more attention. But I'll tell you, moving forward, we got to move past these superheroes because the soldiers start to come back from war and they're a little tired of superheroes too because soldiers are adults. So you start to see more of a jump in romance comics. You start to see a jump in westerns. Sci-fi becomes really the clear frontrunner, and also horror comics start to become very popular and start to really affect the entire genre as well, and might be responsible for one of the things that happens to comics one of the worst things that happens to comics in the Silver Age when we talk next week about it. If you think about it and the whole idea of the superhero, notice that even though like he's Superman, super strong, they're always so super strong, right? Everything was talking about that physical fitness. Americans love it. Everyone obsessed with that. Physicality, the way we look, right? Still. And what does that mean? It's because they're not smart heroes. He's not the smartest man on Earth, is he? He's the strongest man and the fastest man, right? Because the smartest man could probably just figure it out and settle things diplomatically. That doesn't sell comics. Might makes right. America. That's an American thing, right? Might makes right is not the best strategy, but isn't it all superheroes really do almost to this very day? It's a lot of punching. Still, that's how we solve these problems. But again, it's easier when it's a bunch of minions and robots and zombies for someone who's trying to do something entirely evil. There's not much of a gray area there. So super is not as appealing to returning soldiers, all right? And you've got this guy who went there, fought Nazis, punched Hitler in the face, won Captain America. What happens to Captain America? This idea is basically the entire point of the concept of like my project in the class, okay? Captain America is affected by not only his history and his universe, but he's affected by ours, and then it becomes a part of it. Captain America says goodbye. Captain America has the last comic. These aren't selling anymore. Goodbye. Good luck, America, right? And Captain America's not in print anymore for a while. Until later. Spoiler alert. In the Silver Age, what happens? All these heroes show up, right? And then they're looking around, and issue 4 of the Avengers, they find this man frozen in ice. It's Captain America. He's been frozen in ice for all of these years, and we found him. Oh my goodness, let's thaw him out. And now we've got Captain America decades later, right? That's how they brought Captain America from this older age. How do we get this old hero to be back when comics are back, comics are in? We got to bring Captain America back. He was the most popular character. How do we do that? He was frozen in ice. He was frozen in ice. Of course. There you go. So Captain America disappeared, but not for too long. He'd be back in a decade or two. All right. So you've got Western, you have teen comics. So the rise of teen comics, that is Archie comics, right? Archie comics start to become popular. That's romance. That's all of that's wrapped into Archie comics. All right. You have the comics start to get equated to all of the stuff I was just speaking about. As we head into these different genres, okay, the thing that goes on, and this is the thing that happens, I was so looking forward to this. It happened 2 years ago. I realized in my lifetime, Action Comics and Detective Comics were going to hit issue number 1000. They have been in print, never ceasing print. That's amazing, because even when all the comics start to get canceled and go out of business and stop, who's the only ones that stay? Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, right? You got a couple of these Marvel characters that end up showing up again later when Marvel starts to rise up in the later 50s, right? In the mid 50s. So that's a big deal. All those characters that showed up, they got gobbled up by other companies, right? Gobbled up there. Oh, now these characters are mixed with these characters. Oh, Shazam now got gobbled up by here, and he's in the same company as the Blue Beetle. Oh, later on, gobbled up by DC. Now they're in the DC universe. You've seen it. Marvel got gobbled up by what? Disney. They got gobbled up by Disney right after Star Wars got gobbled up by Disney a little bit later. Ridiculous. Or that happened first. I forget. Right? But that is ridiculous, right? That's what they do. Oh, gobble up the Muppets. Now we have the Muppets. Boom. This thing's worth something. This is my point about that. I'll bring it up again later. When Disney bought Marvel, and the stories that are going around now with other companies figuring this stuff out. Oh, we didn't buy Marvel Comics, they say. We bought Marvel's 5,000 character library, right? That's what they see as valuable. And the characters that don't have much history, like Big Hero 6, that was a random comic that came out. All right, let's make that a kid's movie. Here's a setting. Boom, they bought it. Boom, Stan Lee's in it. Go check it out. And then you have like other things where they have the comics that are really stuck in continuity, but now they've got this universe and they've got it all, and that's how they built the Avengers. They saw that happen, and that's money. They built that entire cinematic Marvel universe, and they're telling the same stories they've been telling for 80 years. Oh, now we'll do it as a movie. We just did it as a TV version of this in the cartoon, and that was already a CGI cartoon. First there was the animated cartoon. They've done it over and over with new media. The video game came out. That tells the story, right? Again, the last video, how many times have we seen Batman die? Oh, my Lord. I've seen Uncle Ben, with great power comes great responsibility. 100 different times, right? That's important. It's because these are the characters that survived. These are the characters that survive the dips when all this stuff goes away, and there's not 150 titles. There's not even as many comics in general because of what happens, and here's what happens. Comics start being linked to juvenile delinquency and sexual deviance because they're always going to do this. Adults, they can't take responsibility for the way these kids are behaving. They've got to blame the media. They've got to blame that rap music. They've got to, in the 90s. They've got to blame Marilyn Manson in the later 90s. They've got to blame video games in the later, and then they start picking the video games. Oh, this is because of Grand Theft Auto. This is because of this. There's a great documentary about pinball. Pinball was outlawed in New York. And LaGuardia, Mayor LaGuardia, there's a picture throwing the pinball machines in the pit like it's prohibition because of all the sexual gyrations that kids would do when they'd get together and they're all playing pinball. Remember, dancing used to be outlawed. Elvis, that was a big deal because he shook his hips. Remember how small and censored and ridiculously just in some instances, adorable the past is. And other ones, obviously, it leads to monstrosities and horrible treatment of people and inequality. But the world is just so small, and there's so much different types of innocence and just what we think because of religion. Oh, that dancing, the devil is in him. What? Right? That's what it is. Okay? So that's always going on. We've got to blame everything for the new behavior, for behavior that's going to be different. Oh, kids that grew up not in a war, you're going to be different. Kids that grew up not in a Great Depression, you're going to be different. Kids that grew up the sons and daughters of immigrants, not the immigrants themselves, they're going to be different. Our lives, and who knows when this is, I don't know, have only been getting more comfortable, okay? And that's what happens. Post-war, the suburbs get conceptualized, and the family home starts to become a place of entertainment. Oh, we got to get an entertainment center for the home. The home used to be associated with work. You didn't go to work, okay? You worked the farm, you worked the mill, you worked the stuff, you worked the land, okay? Then things start to get metro and all that. You go to your jobs and all that stuff. The home is just the home. People used to obsess with work. They made children work. All right? And some of it good. Some of it being like, we got this great gift donated to us, the Statue of Liberty. America's broke. We can't build it. Hey, America in the newspaper, we just got this great gift. And we want to build it, but we can't build it. If you've got some money and the poor nation sends and they go, so here, I had a nickel and I had a dime. And this means a lot, right? I had $1, I had this. And they raised the first crowdfunder to get the Statue of Liberty up. And it happens in record time. There's a pipeline that was going to be done because of American ingenuity and the workmanship back then, and American craftsmanship and steel and really caring about doing a good job and having pride. That's a lot of this generation, this workhorse generation, this military generation, the generation that got here working. This is why, again, even your grandparents, like my grandparents, My generation's great. They look at what's on your plate. They always look what's on your plate. Did you finish what's on your plate? Yep, because they grew up in the Depression. Bread lines. We're waiting in the line for food. The only food is bread. That's a bread line. Okay? Imagine the world is just, it's as good as prison. That's the best you can do. Poverty. Horrifying. Okay? And all this still happens. And we're trying to always fix it, make it better, volunteer, always help, be helpful. That's the point of superheroes. Okay? To stand for being someone that helps. And notice they don't ask for money, right? That's the point. You just help people. And America used to be a lot more helpful, and there used to be a lot more to it. There's a pipeline, again, I was saying the pipeline, and they finished it 6 months ahead of schedule. Does that happen now? No. Now they know that, oh, well, if we do this, then we get another contract. And if we delay it, the contract says, again, I'm from New York. I know unions. I'm in a union, son of a union. Those things that are always associated with mobsters, criminals, right? Gangsters, fat cat gangsters, like that, that's real. Oh, let's do a bad job so that we get another thing. Let's not finish so that we can do this. Over time, things start to get manipulative. Back in the day, the ethics, and this goes to throughout all history. Remember, dueling used to exist. I challenge you to a duel. All right, I will meet you at the dueling. That's how rich people did it. But also, the Wild West did it. All right, this many paces. We have a gentleman's agreement that we're going to do this and then do it. And if you're a scoundrel, you shoot someone in the back. But even scoundrels didn't do it. That's this thing. There's a code of honor. There are rules of engagement for war. You see it on all your shows, right? Here's your Game of Thrones. Here's your anything. The king comes out of his thing, and then we ride up and we got it. Here's our army there, and the two most important people are going to meet right there. But no one just says, I'll just kill him. Because you can't. There's a rule. There's these rules. Okay? The past was a lot more based on ethics and manners and rules and codes of honor and things like that. You hear about all that stuff. No, there's always deviousness, always stuff behind the scenes, always. But you see what I'm saying. You see what I'm saying. Okay? They blame comics for the exact opposite of all of this. And that is the point. They blame comics, these horror comics specifically. EC Comics, excellent. They used to stand for educational comics. All right? And this man will produce educational comics and religious comics and things of that nature. And then his son, he dies, and his son inherits the company. And he decides to make EC Comics stand for horror and violence and crime and just some of the most vicious to this day. Because I'll show you the most famous cover. Look at that. And that is going to scare some people who are afraid of dancing, isn't it? Right? And you are going to wonder, does this affect people? Because you got to also wonder, I do believe some people get affected by the media they take in. They certainly do. So everyone's right in a way. But does that mean the censorship of everything? Of course not. So what goes on is this man, Frederick Wortham, the bastard, yeah, I said it. He shows up and creates this book called The Seduction of the Innocent. This is during the McCarthy era. All right? So that sort of stuff. And people are also afraid of communism. All right? That's starting to be on the rise. Spies and this sort of thing and evil. And we just got past the war. And we got to make sure that America stays safe from all of these horribly illustrated racist depictions of these animals, these monsters. And that's always what it is. Animals. They would depict people as animals, lower than a person. That's how they would do it. Oh, how do you make look, I drew him as an animal. Was a way to insult people. So think of that, all right? In this book, he says, okay, and there's film of this with his stupid voice, blaming comics, Wonder Woman, an easy target. You can just pick some panels from Wonder Woman. There she is getting spanked in fishnets, tied up. Not a good look, right? You can go look at these horror comics. All these horror comics, bloody, decapitated monsters and zombies, horrors, the devil, Satan, all of this, right? That's coming for you, kids. And that's the reason that kid stole bubblegum, right? It's the devil's in him. And it's because of that thing that he reads. So, nonsense, as we still see today. Superman, that equals white race superiority. That is what he stands for. He is the Ubermensch. He says, Batman and Robin, obviously homosexual. They're obviously this. That's always happened. How are you not going to think that? Because the times are innocent. You just see footage. There's people at the YMCA, and we just wrestle for fun, and blah blah blah. Like Batman in the comics would look that way too. And he says, "Oh look, there's him in his dressing gown, right? Oh, and there's Robin. You know that's obviously, and he's smoking. That's obviously like they obviously just had sex, and it's like, he's his adopted son. That's what he is. Okay, the same way Alfred is that is his adopted father. Batman, this is his adopted son, but it's the easiest thing to make fun of. So they go for it, and you can show one or two panels, and it's easy to do. Because no matter what happens, it's like, oh, look, the Joker nailed him in some crazy trap, and they're in a giant bed because the bed bug's going to get up. Here's an image of them in bed together. Oh, they're evil. They're trying to make your kids evil. All right? So, just horrible. It works. It scares the nation. Comics. Terrible. They create the most famous thing that we all know to this very day that is in some ways celebrated, but also terrible because it's the censorship, but at the same time, it's a rating system, right? But it does damage comics, and it's the Comics Code Authority, all right? It's this famous stamp that says this has been approved, and the rules of the Comics Code Authority are as follows. There's a bunch of them, but some of them were specifically targeting those horror comics. You are not allowed to use the term horror. You're not allowed to use the term creepy. This was very specific. You cannot show depictions of drugs at all. You cannot show depictions of law being broken and it being a good thing. It always has to be admonished. You have to respect the police, I believe, in there. Like, you have to respect authority is like a part of that, okay? And there's a bunch of other terrible, slanderous, and ridiculously narrow-minded rules that get set out, and also probably some good rules, because a rating system is fine, all right? And again, this is what gangster rap goes for. This is what rap deals with in the 90s, is this was pre that famous warning label, parental advisory label, before that existed. So sure, you know what? You have a right to say, like, you got to be this old to buy this, because that's fair. That's fair with some things, right? When they say the F word all day and talk about horrible crimes and rape and things, and it's terrible. You don't want your kid to get a video game that has that and not know it, or buy an album for your kid and that's what it's all about and you were not aware. So it's like, oh, be aware. This is rated this. Television was late to the rating game. Movies have always been doing it. Theaters, well, we rate movies. Who cares? Why are you fighting against video game ratings when that happens? You're right. Just rate them. That's okay. But you can't just say, but you're never allowed to make this version. That's what the Comics Code did. So sure, there's these ratings and rules, but you can never this. And that is not right. And that's the point. So churches, literally in this time, held book burnings. So we're really thinking with our heads, right? Burning books, always a good time. Comics becomes a dirty word, all right? It's, how terrible. And again, why the comic art form is looked at as low art still is because even comic is a dirty word. Remember, I say remember to you guys a lot, but you might not remember. Cosplay used to be a dirty word. Cosplay used to only mean a certain amount of people. Furries now sometimes represents a little more where maybe some sexuality is involved, right? But just cosplay in general used to just, that's what that means. No, that's not what that means, all right? Furries, it's even probably still not what that means, all right? A persona is just, hey, whatever, okay? Other people have these digital avatars, don't they? What's the difference if you have a persona, okay? That's the whole thing. Creative expression and costumes and all that stuff is phenomenal. And the very concept of when you put a mask on, you're different. And if you've never tried it, try it. I know this, I'm no furry, but I own a gorilla suit because I'm a ridiculous person. So I have a gorilla suit, and when you put on a gorilla suit or a luchador mask, right? Or a Halloween mask. That's why Halloween's fun. It's the one time you walk around and you're like, no one knows it's me, right? And you act a little different. I just bring all that up because I was bringing up how comics became the most celebrated thing becomes a dirty word, right? If you're the hero and you stick around long enough, you see yourself become the bad guy, right? That phrase, and it keeps ringing true. What Harvey Dent says, what Two-Face says in The Dark Knight. So you've got that Comics Code Authority. This leads into such nonsense that we're going to cover in the next video and in the next chapter next week as we get into the Silver Age. AKA, in a way, the domestic era. There's a domestic era. Not like a Golden Age, Silver Age, but like a subtitle of a domestic era, Lois Lane comics, which are amazing and ridiculous and sell very well. Jimmy Olsen comics, Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen. So since Superman is still working, well, then we got to make the everyday comic starring Lois Lane, but her wacky adventures, right? And she has some of the most ridiculous adventures and covers that I can't. I'll share those with you, and so does Superman, because they just end up being silly. All right, silliness happens because they got censored as much as they did. So it's like, let's make these really for kids, and they become such silly nonsense. Not that the Golden Age didn't have some of its silly nonsense. Again, it's for kids, but now it's just, I mean, it's just really watered down. I'll show you the proof. All right, and some of this happens because it's the Eisenhower era of the 50s, but also what's about to happen? Television. And that's going to infer a lot and change a lot for a lot of this creative stuff as far as the comics medium and superheroes and things going forward, because the next thing that happens is we've been talking about all these heroes and they're all so mighty and perfect. And in the Silver Age, this Marvel comic shows up and superheroes really start to have problems. And that's what the Silver Age is about. Superheroes with problems. So we're going to talk about that next. Call me a tiny pony because I am a little horse. This was so fun. This was just me ranting all about comics, the thing that I love. I did all this research, did all this, put it in pretty much a good timeline order. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, any follow-up questions, a Q&A, I would love to do it because I might have the answers for you. If I do not, I will do my research to find you some of those answers, okay? I feel there's a lot more to be said about Batman. There's a lot more lessons to be said about Batman and Bill Finger and what was it, Jerry Ordway, right? I think Jerry Robinson, right? So all of that, like there's so much important richness to Batman, Superman specifically, Wonder Woman, and it just a lot. There's a lot more that show up. The JSA, also a very important one because that's when comic books. All right, let's just take all of our heroes and put them in one book. Wow, and that did very, very well. So the JSA infers the Justice League later on, right? And then that, of course, infers, well, if they got a bunch of people, we better do that. And the Avengers thaw out Captain America. There you go. We're in the Silver Age. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, and I can't wait. I'm having the best time. I hope you are too.